They laughed at her for bringing a dog to her own criminal trial. The judge smirked. The prosecutor mocked. The jury whispered behind raised hands. She sat quietly, absorbing their judgment, her loyal companion at her feet. Then she gave a command in a language they didn't understand. In an instant, the courtroom fell silent as her dog transformed from a supposed emotional crutch into something else entirely. Something trained, something military. And suddenly, everyone realized they had gravely misjudged the woman on trial. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy real stories of extraordinary people, consider subscribing for more remarkable true tales like this one. Astria Thorne sat at the defense table, her posture perfect despite the weight of stares from around the courtroom. Her Belgian Malinois, Vanguard, lay at her feet, his caramel and black coat immaculate, the service dog vest strapped to his muscular frame. She gently placed her hand on his head, a gesture that appeared to be seeking comfort to those watching, though her eyes remained fixed forward. The Cook County Courthouse buzzed with pre-trial energy. The gallery was packed with media and spectators drawn to what had become a high-profile case. Astria Thorne, accused of assaulting prominent businessman Elliot Blackwood in a hotel bar, had already been tried in the court of public opinion. The wealthy victim, his family connections, and his tearful television interview had painted her as unstable and dangerous. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Ellington Hargrove," the bailiff announced. The distinguished judge entered, his silver hair and stern demeanor commanding immediate respect. The room rose in unison. As he took his seat and gestured for everyone to be seated, his gaze immediately fell to Vanguard, his brow furrowed. "Ms. Thorne, while I understand accommodations for service animals, this is a serious criminal proceeding. Is this arrangement absolutely necessary?" Whispers rippled through the gallery. At the prosecution table, District Attorney Donovan Mercer's lips curled into a smirk. "Yes, Your Honor," Astria replied, her voice soft but clear. "Vanguard is necessary for my medical condition." She offered no elaboration, no emotional plea, just the simple statement of fact. Mercer rose dramatically, buttoning his expensive suit jacket. "Your Honor, the prosecution has concerns about the prejudicial effect of a sympathy animal influencing the jury." A juror in the front row stifled a laugh when Vanguard shifted position, and soon small chuckles spread through the courtroom. Astria's face remained impassive, though her fingers tightened slightly on her lap. "Your concerns are noted, Mr. Mercer," Judge Hargrove said, his tone making it clear where his sympathies lay. "Ms. Thorne, please ensure your companion remains unobtrusive." Astria's attorney, Zora Levesque, leaned toward her client. "We discussed this," she whispered. "The jury already has preconceptions. The dog is not helping." "He stays," Astria replied, fingers closing around a small object in her palm. The gallery couldn't see it was a challenge coin, its edges worn smooth from years of worried thumbing. The jury selection had been difficult, media coverage had been extensive, and most potential jurors had already formed opinions about the case. The final 12 looked at Astria with varying degrees of suspicion or pity. Neither was helpful to her case. During opening statements, Mercer paced before the jury. His reputation as a showman was well earned, his voice rising and falling with practiced precision. "The defendant wants you to see her as vulnerable, as someone who needs emotional support just to function." He gestured dismissively toward Vanguard. "But the evidence will show that on the night of March 15th, Ms. Thorne violently assaulted Elliot Blackwood, a respected businessman, causing severe injuries that required hospitalization." Mercer painted a vivid picture of Blackwood, describing him as a pillar of the community, a family man, someone who had simply been enjoying a quiet drink when Astria had supposedly attacked him without provocation. "The defense will try to paint a different picture," Mercer continued. "They will attempt to justify this violent attack, but the facts remain. Mr. Blackwood suffered multiple fractures. Ms. Thorne has no visible injuries. This was not self-defense. This was a brutal assault by someone who clearly knows how to inflict harm." Astria's attorney, Zora Levesque, presented a different picture during her opening, though her delivery lacked Mercer's theatrical flair. "Ms. Thorne intervened to protect others, that is all. The evidence will show Mr. Blackwood was the aggressor, that he had been harassing the bartender, and that Ms. Thorne stepped in only when it became physical. This is not a case of unprovoked violence, but of a good Samaritan protecting someone vulnerable." But as the morning wore on, it became clear the jury was captivated by Mercer's performance. The judge sustained his objections and overruled Levesque's, and every time attention turned to Vanguard, eyes rolled and heads shook. Only Astria remained still, her breathing measured, her eyes tracking every movement in the courtroom with unsettling precision. During a brief recess, two legal interns whispered in the hallway. "What is she thinking, bringing a dog to court?" "It makes her look unstable," one said. "I heard she insisted." "Levesque tried to talk her out of it," the other replied. "Some people just want to be victims." When court resumed, Mercer called his first witness, the hotel security guard who had responded to the incident. The man described arriving at the scene to find Blackwood on the ground, clutching his arm. He was in obvious pain, the guard testified. The defendant was standing over him, completely calm. Too calm, if you ask me, like she had done this before. "Objection," Levesque called. "Speculation." "Sustained," Judge Hargrove said, but his tone suggested he found the observation interesting. "The jury will disregard the witness's personal assessment." The damage was done, however. The idea had been planted. Astria watched the jury's faces, noting how several of them studied her with renewed suspicion. When the guard finished his testimony, Levesque cross-examined him. "Did you see the actual altercation between Miss Thorne and Mr. Blackwood?" "No, I arrived after." "So you have no first-hand knowledge of who initiated the confrontation?" "No." "Did you speak with anyone else present during the incident?" "The bartender was there, but she seemed reluctant to get involved." "Did you ask why she was reluctant?" "Objection," Mercer interrupted. "Calls for speculation." "Sustained." So it went, with Levesque unable to establish the events leading up to the confrontation. With each blocked question, the gallery's perception solidified. Astria was unstable, dangerous, hiding behind her service dog. The morning session ended, and Astria was led to a conference room where she could eat lunch privately with her attorney. "This is not going well," Levesque said, spreading files across the table. "The judge is clearly biased against you, and the jury is buying Mercer's narrative. We need to consider a different approach." Astria unwrapped her sandwich methodically. "What do you suggest?" "Character witnesses. We have statements from your former colleagues, though without details of your service record, they are somewhat vague." "That was the agreement when I left," Astria replied. "My service record remains classified. That classification is hurting us now. Without context, you appear to be someone with possible military training who attacked a civilian. It looks worse, not better." Astria fed a small piece of her sandwich to Vanguard, who took it gently. "What about the complete security footage? Have they provided it yet?" "They claim technical difficulties with the segment showing the initial confrontation. Convenient, right? I have filed another motion to compel, but Hargrove is dragging his feet." Astria nodded, as if this confirmed something she had suspected. "And Blackwood? Will he testify?" "This afternoon. He will play the victim and play it well. He has been coached by the best." "I'm sure he has." Astria's fingers found the challenge coin again, turning it over in her palm. Let him tell his story. When court resumed for the afternoon session, Mercer called Elliot Blackwood to the stand. Handsome, wealthy, his arm still in a sling, he cut a sympathetic figure. He took the oath with appropriate solemnity, then settled into the witness chair, adjusting his position as if in discomfort. "Mr. Blackwood, please tell the court what happened on the night of March 15th, Mercer began. "I was at the Meridian Hotel bar having a drink after a business dinner," Blackwood replied, his voice carefully modulated to convey both strength and vulnerability. "I was alone, just unwinding, when I noticed Miss Thorne watching me from across the bar." He described how Astria had supposedly approached him, initiated conversation, and then become aggressive when he wasn't interested. "She approached me at the bar," Blackwood testified, voice quavering perfectly. "When I politely declined her advances, she became aggressive. Then she attacked me, professionally, methodically, like she had done it before." He looked at Vanguard. "She even threatened to have her dog attack me." The jury looked sympathetically at Blackwood. Judge Hargrove shook his head at Astria. "No further questions," Mercer said, satisfied. Levesque approached for cross-examination. "Mr. Blackwood, isn't it true you were intoxicated that night?" "Objection," Mercer called out. "Relevance." "Sustained," Judge Hargrove ruled immediately. "Mr. Blackwood," Levesque tried again, "did you interact with anyone else at the bar before Ms. Thorne?" "Objection. Outside the scope of direct examination." "Sustained." Levesque adjusted her approach. "Mr. Blackwood, you testified that Ms. Thorne threatened to have her dog attack you. Can you quote exactly what she said? Blackwood hesitated. She said if I moved, the dog would, and I quote, take me down. And did the dog attack you? No, but it was clearly trained to. The way it watched me, it was just waiting for the command. So, to be clear, at no point did the dog actually touch you. No, but only because I stayed still as she demanded. Levesque nodded. No further questions. As Blackwood stepped down, he passed close to the defense table. Vanguard remained perfectly still, but his eyes tracked Blackwood with unsettling focus. Only those very near might have noticed how Blackwood quickened his pace. The prosecution called several more witnesses, hotel guests who had seen the aftermath, a doctor who testified to the severity of Blackwood's injuries, a character witness who spoke to Blackwood's reputation in the business community. By the end of the day, Astria Thorne had been effectively portrayed as an unstable woman with unexplained combat skills and a service animal that may or may not have been trained as a weapon. The jury's sideways glances told the story. They had already decided. As court adjourned for the day, Judge Hargrove looked directly at Astria. Ms. Thorne, I expect your dog to be under better control tomorrow. Any disruptions, and I will have it removed from my courtroom. Vanguard hadn't made a sound all day. The second day of trial began with a palpable tension. News vans lined the street outside the courthouse, and the gallery was even more crowded than before. Something about the case had captured public attention, a sense that there was more to the story than a simple assault. Astria arrived early with Levesque, Vanguard moving smoothly beside her. Several spectators pointed and whispered. A court officer approached them in the hallway. Ms. Thorne, Judge Hargrove asked me to remind you that your dog must remain absolutely quiet and still today. Any disturbance and he will be removed. Astria nodded once. Vanguard will not disturb the proceedings. Inside the courtroom, Mercer was already at the prosecution table, surrounded by his team. He looked up as Astria entered, his expression calculating. Once Judge Hargrove called the court to order, Mercer resumed his case. The prosecution calls Ms. Jada Wilson. A nervous young woman took the stand. She was identified as a hotel guest who had been in the bar during the incident. Miss Wilson, what did you witness that night? Mercer asked. I was sitting at a table near the bar. I saw Mr. Blackwood talking to the bartender. Then this woman, she pointed at Astria, came up behind him. There was some kind of argument. Then suddenly Mr. Blackwood was on the ground and she was standing over him. Did you see how Mr. Blackwood ended up on the ground? It happened so fast. One moment he was standing, the next he was down. She moved like nothing I have ever seen before. What do you mean by that? The woman hesitated. It was like in those action movies, but real. Precise, controlled, not wild or panicked like you would expect in a bar fight. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, Mercer said, looking meaningfully at the jury. No further questions. Levesque approached for cross-examination. Ms. Wilson, prior to Mr. Blackwood ending up on the ground, did you observe his interaction with the bartender? Yes. How would you characterize that interaction? He seemed to be flirting with her. Was she reciprocating? Not really. She looked uncomfortable. Did you see Mr. Blackwood touch the bartender? Objection, Mercer interrupted. Outside the scope of direct examination. Judge Hargrove considered. I will allow it, but keep it brief, counselor. Did you see Mr. Blackwood touch the bartender? Levesque repeated. Yes. He grabbed her wrist at one point. And what was her reaction? She tried to pull away. That's when the defendant approached them. Thank you, Miss Wilson. No further questions. As the witness stepped down, a murmur ran through the gallery. It was the first testimony that suggested Blackwood might have been the initial aggressor. Ms. Thorne, Levesque whispered. This is good. If we can establish that Blackwood was harassing the bartender, it supports our defense. We need the bartender's testimony, Astria replied, and the complete security footage. I've been trying to locate her. She seems to have left town suddenly. Astria's eyes narrowed slightly. That is convenient for some people. The prosecution's next witness was a character witness for Blackwood, a business partner who spoke glowingly of his integrity and community standing. The testimony added little to the facts of the case but further polished Blackwood's image for the jury. During a brief recess, a law clerk accidentally dropped a heavy legal tome near the defense table. The loud bang echoed through the courtroom. Those watching closely might have noticed Astria's reaction, lightning fast but controlled, an immediate assessment of the threat, her body poised to move in any direction necessary, then a return to stillness that seemed almost unnatural. Vanguard had not flinched, but his eyes had tracked the source of the sound with military precision. When the trial resumed, Mercer seemed to be building toward something. The prosecution calls Detective Leona Alvarez. A sharp-featured woman in a tailored suit took the stand. She identified herself as the detective assigned to the case. Detective Alvarez, in your investigation, did you run a background check on the defendant? Yes, that is standard procedure. And what did you find? Ms. Thorne has no criminal record. However, there are significant gaps in her employment and residence history, large periods of time where she seems to have no address, no job, no presence in any database I could access. Is that unusual? Very. Most people leave digital footprints everywhere. Ms. Thorne has years where she simply vanishes from all records. Did you form any professional opinion about these gaps? Objection, Levesque called. Calls for speculation. I will rephrase, Mercer said smoothly. Detective, in your experience, what kinds of individuals typically have such gaps in their records? Those in classified government positions, military personnel on special assignments, or criminals who are very good at covering their tracks. Mercer nodded. And regarding the defendant's dog, did you investigate its status? Yes, it is registered as a service animal, but the specific training certification is vague, and the medical condition necessitating the service animal is not clearly documented. Thank you, Detective. No further questions. During cross-examination, Levesque attempted to establish alternative explanations for the gaps in Astria's records, but the damage had been done. The jury had been led to believe Astria was either a government operative with combat training or a criminal with a falsified service animal. As the afternoon session began, Mercer announced, the prosecution would like to present security footage from the Meridian Hotel on the night in question. A large screen was set up, and the footage began to play. It showed the hotel bar from an elevated angle. Blackwood could be seen at the bar. Astria was seated at a table some distance away, Vanguard at her feet. The footage jumped forward, showing Blackwood now on the ground, Astria standing near him, hotel security arriving. As you can see, Mercer explained, the defendant approached Mr. Blackwood and, moments later, he was incapacitated on the floor. Unfortunately, due to a technical glitch, we are missing the few seconds of the actual confrontation. Objection, Levesque stood. The prosecution is selectively presenting evidence. We have repeatedly requested the complete footage. Your Honor, Mercer responded, as I have explained to the court and to defense counsel, the hotel experienced a technical issue with their security system. This is all the footage available. Judge Hargrove nodded. The objection is overruled. The jury will consider the evidence as presented. Astria leaned toward Levesque. He is lying. The complete footage exists. I know, Levesque whispered back, but proving it is another matter. The prosecution then called a final witness, a forensic expert who analyzed the injuries sustained by Blackwood. Based on the fracture patterns, the expert testified, the defendant used specific techniques consistent with military or advanced martial arts training. These were not wild, panicked strikes, but calculated moves designed to incapacitate. Would an untrained individual be capable of inflicting these specific injuries? Mercer asked. Highly unlikely. This required knowledge of anatomy and precise application of force. When Levesque cross-examined, she tried to establish that the injuries were also consistent with defensive techniques used in self-defense classes, but the expert maintained that the level of precision indicated advanced training. As the prosecution rested its case, Mercer looked satisfied. He had painted a clear picture for the jury. Astria Thorne was a dangerous woman with unexplained combat training who had viciously attacked a respectable businessman, possibly using her service dog as an intimidation tactic. The defense may present its case, Judge Hargrove announced. Levesque called Astria to the stand. As she was sworn in, the courtroom fell silent. Everyone was curious to hear what this mysterious woman would say in her own defense. Ms. Thorne, please tell the court in your own words what happened at the Meridian Hotel bar on March 15th. Astria's voice was clear and measured. I was at the hotel bar having dinner. I observed Mr. Blackwood becoming increasingly intoxicated and increasingly aggressive toward the female bartender. When he grabbed her wrist and she couldn't pull away, I intervened. Did you approach with the intention of assaulting Mr. Blackwood? No. I approached to de-escalate the situation. I identified myself and asked him to release the bartender. He responded by attempting to strike me. I defended myself using the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. Did your dog, Vanguard, participate in this altercation? No. Vanguard remained in a downstay position throughout the incident, as he was trained to do. Ms. Thorne, several witnesses have testified that your movements appeared professionally trained. Do you have such training? Astria hesitated, glancing at Levesque, who nodded slightly. I have received training in various self-defense techniques. As part of what? I am not at liberty to discuss the specifics of my former employment. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Ms. Thorne, Mercer began his cross-examination with a predatory smile, you claim you intervened to protect the bartender, yet she has not come forward to corroborate your story. Why do you think that is? I cannot speak to her reasons. Perhaps because your version of events is fabricated? No. Perhaps because she is afraid. Afraid of whom, Ms. Thorne? Mr. Blackwood, the respected businessman? Or you, the woman who can take down a man twice her size with professional efficiency? Objection, Levesque called. Argumentative. Sustained. Mercer adjusted his approach. Ms. Thorne, you mentioned you are not at liberty to discuss your former employment. Are you claiming some sort of classified status? I am stating that certain aspects of my professional history are subject to confidentiality agreements. How convenient, Mercer's tone was mocking. And your dog, Vanguard. He is registered as a service animal for a medical condition you have not clearly documented. What exactly is this medical condition? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Resulting from what? My service. Your mysterious, classified service that you conveniently cannot discuss, Mercer said, his voice dripping with skepticism. Ms. Thorne, would you say you have anger management issues? Is that why you need this emotional support animal? The gallery erupted in laughter. Judge Hargrove smirked. Order, but the question stands. Astria looked directly at Mercer, then at her attorney, who nodded subtly. Your Honor, Astria said, with the court's permission, I would like to demonstrate something relevant to this line of questioning. Judge Hargrove waved his hand dismissively. If you must. Astria stood, and in that moment, she changed. Her spine straightened, her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. Gone was the quiet defendant, replaced by something else entirely, a presence that commanded attention, military bearing, unmistakable to anyone who had ever served. She spoke a single word in Dutch. Gereedheid. Vanguard transformed instantly. He snapped to perfect attention, eyes forward, every muscle coiled and ready. No longer a pet, a weapon. Observe, Astria said quietly. Using hand signals nearly imperceptible to the gallery, she commanded Vanguard through a series of complex tactical positions. The dog moved with mechanical precision, first into a flanking stance, then a covering position, finally into what military personnel would recognize as a threat assessment formation. Each movement synchronized perfectly to her subtle commands, executed with a fluidity that spoke of thousands of hours of training. The laughter died. Complete silence fell over the courtroom. A young reporter in the back frantically recorded with her phone. Judge Hargrove's smirk vanished. Mercer took an involuntary step back from the witness stand. Mr. Mercer, Astria's voice carried clearly now, all pretense of meekness gone. Vanguard is not an emotional support animal. He is a retired Tier 1 military working dog with 4 combat deployments, and I am not dependent on him. He is my partner. She turned to Blackwood, whose face had drained of color. And now I would like to see the complete security footage, including the part where Mr. Blackwood attempted to assault the bartender and I intervened. Judge Hargrove, completely stunned, found his voice. Ms. Levesque, approach the bench immediately. As the attorneys huddled with the judge, the gallery erupted in whispers. Spectators leaned forward, trying to hear the heated conversation taking place. Vanguard remained at attention, his discipline unwavering. Your Honor, Levesque was saying, we have repeatedly requested the complete footage. Mr. Mercer has consistently claimed technical difficulties. I believe we have just demonstrated that my client is not who the prosecution has portrayed her to be, and I move that the court compel the immediate production of the unedited security footage. Mercer's confident demeanor had cracked slightly. Your Honor, I have presented what was provided to my office. If there are other segments, I was not made aware of them. Judge Hargrove's expression had shifted from smugness to concern. Mr. Mercer, I want the complete footage in my chambers within the hour. Ms. Levesque, you mentioned confidentiality agreements regarding your client's service. Are there individuals who could speak to this while respecting those agreements? Yes, Your Honor. With the court's permission, I would like to call Commander Thaddeus Wright of the United States Navy. When the bench conference ended, Judge Hargrove addressed the courtroom. In light of new considerations, this court will recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The jury is instructed not to discuss this case with anyone or to consume any media coverage of these proceedings. As the courtroom cleared, reporters rushed out to file their stories. The young reporter who had recorded Astria's demonstration was already uploading the video to social media, where it would accumulate millions of views overnight. In the hallway outside, Levesque touched Astria's arm. That was a risk. It was necessary, Astria replied. Blackwood recognized me yesterday. I saw it in his eyes. He knows who I am, which means others do too. They were never going to let this end fairly. Commander Wright will be here in the morning. He can only say so much, but it should be enough. Astria nodded. And the bartender? Still missing. But with the complete footage, we may not need her testimony. That night, the video of Astria and Vanguard's courtroom demonstration spread across the internet like wildfire. News programs played it on loop. Military forums exploded with speculation about who this woman might be. By morning, the courthouse was surrounded by crowds and media vans. Inside, the gallery was standing room only, filled with veterans who had come to observe. As Astria entered with Vanguard, several stood at attention, a gesture of respect she acknowledged with a slight nod. Judge Hargrove entered, his demeanor markedly different from previous days. Before we resume, I wish to address a matter of evidence. The court has reviewed the complete security footage from the Meridian Hotel, which was delivered to my chambers last night. Having seen this footage, I am troubled by the selective presentation of evidence in this case. He glared at Mercer, who stared at his notes. The complete footage will be shown to the jury. Additionally, the prosecution has suddenly located the bartender who was working that night, Ms. Daphne Rivera, who will testify today. Ms. Levesque, you may call your first witness. The defense calls Commander Thaddeus Wright. A naval officer in dress uniform entered, his posture impeccable, his chest adorned with service ribbons. He was sworn in and took the stand. Commander Wright, how do you know the defendant, Astria Thorne? Lieutenant Commander Thorne served under my command in a specialized unit of naval special warfare. Can you elaborate on the nature of this unit? I can state that it was a K-9 handler unit attached to special operations. The specific missions and operational details remain classified. Was Vanguard part of this unit? Yes. He was Lieutenant Commander Thorne's assigned working dog, one of the finest I have ever seen. And Lieutenant Commander Thorne's service record? Wright's expression remained professional, but there was unmistakable pride in his voice. Lieutenant Commander Thorne served with distinction. She received the Silver Star for actions that saved 23 hostages in an operation we cannot name, in a country I cannot specify. Wright looked at Vanguard with respect. Her partner completed more successful target acquisitions than any working dog in the program's history. Thank you, Commander. No further questions. Mercer approached for cross-examination, his earlier confidence diminished. Commander Wright, when did Lieutenant Commander Thorne leave the service? 3 years ago. Under what circumstances? Honorably. Beyond that, I cannot comment. Did her departure have anything to do with emotional or psychological issues? Objection, Levesque called. Assumes facts not in evidence. Sustained. Mercer tried another angle. Is it standard procedure for military working dogs to be released to their handlers as personal pets? It is not uncommon, especially when the bond between handler and dog is as strong as theirs. Vanguard was officially retired from service and released to Lieutenant Commander Thorne's care. So he is no longer a military asset? Correct, but he retains his training. Mercer had no further questions. Next, the complete security footage was played for the court. Unlike the edited version shown previously, this footage showed the entire incident. Blackwood could be seen becoming increasingly aggressive with the female bartender. When she tried to move away, he grabbed her wrist forcefully. Astria approached, spoke to him, and he turned, swinging wildly at her. With precision movements, she deflected his punch and took him down with a controlled defensive technique. Throughout the incident, Vanguard remained in place, watching but not engaging. When the footage ended, the courtroom was silent. The contrast between this reality and the narrative Mercer had presented was stark. "The defense calls Ms. Daphne Rivera," Levesque announced. The bartender from the security footage entered, visibly nervous. After being sworn in, she testified that Blackwood had been harassing her throughout the evening, becoming increasingly aggressive as he drank. "He wouldn't take no for an answer," she explained. "When I tried to move away, he grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises." That's when Miss Thorne stepped in. She was calm, professional. She identified herself and asked him to let me go. He tried to hit her. What happened next was so fast I could barely follow it. "Why didn't you come forward earlier?" Levesque asked. Rivera looked down. "Mr. Blackwood is powerful in this city. The day after it happened, I received a visit from one of his associates suggesting I take a vacation. They gave me an envelope of cash and said it would be better for everyone if I wasn't available to testify. Did you report this to the police?" "I was afraid. But when I saw the video online last night, I realized I couldn't stay silent." During cross-examination, Mercer tried to suggest Rivera had been paid by the defense to change her story, but her testimony remained consistent. As the defense rested its case, Judge Hargrove addressed the courtroom. "In light of the evidence presented, Mr. Mercer, does the prosecution wish to proceed?" Mercer conferred briefly with his team. "Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Ms. Thorne." "Motion granted," Judge Hargrove declared. "Ms. Thorne, you are free to go. This court offers its apologies for the miscarriage of justice that nearly occurred here." As Astria rose, several veterans in the gallery stood at attention. "Ms. Thorne," Judge Hargrove added, "Commander, the court apologizes for its misconceptions." Astria nodded once, professionally. "Accepted, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, cameras and reporters swarmed as Astria and Vanguard exited. The viral video had exploded overnight, tens of millions of views showing the moment when laughter turned to stunned silence. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne, will you be filing a countersuit against Mr. Blackwood? Commander, can you tell us more about your military service? Is Vanguard still considered dangerous?" Astria declined to answer, moving efficiently through the crowd. Levesque handled the press. "My client has been fully exonerated. The evidence speaks for itself. Now we ask for privacy as she returns to her life." At the bottom of the steps, a young woman approached. It was Daphne Rivera, the bartender. "Ms. Thorne," she said, "I wanted to thank you properly, and to apologize for not coming forward sooner." "No need," Astria replied. "Fear is a powerful motivator." "You never said who you were," Rivera continued. "You could have, and no one would have treated you that way." Astria's expression softened slightly. "That is not why we serve." She reached down, affectionately scratched Vanguard's ear. For the first time since the trial began, she smiled. "Some of the best warriors I know never needed anyone to know their names." As she turned to leave, Rivera asked, "What will you do now?" "Continue our work," Astria replied. "There are many kinds of service." She did not elaborate, but Rivera noticed the business card Astria pressed into her hand. It read simply, "Thorne Security Consulting. When conventional solutions fail." As Astria walked away from the courthouse, several other veterans with service dogs watched from across the street. They exchanged knowing nods with her, silent acknowledgement from those who understood. The morning sun cast long shadows behind Astria and Vanguard as they walked away, one woman and one dog that appeared much larger than they should be. Back in the courthouse, an investigation was already beginning into how evidence had been suppressed. Mercer faced disciplinary action, and Blackwood was being charged with witness tampering. But for Astria and Vanguard, the mission was complete. Justice had been served, not through special treatment or privilege, but through truth finally revealed. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Astria sat on her apartment balcony, Vanguard at her side. Her phone had been ringing constantly with interview requests, job offers, and messages of support from veterans across the country. She had answered none of them. Instead, she held her worn challenge coin, turning it over in her fingers as she had done countless times during moments of decision. On one side was the emblem of her unit, on the other, their motto, "Silently we serve." Vanguard rested his head on her knee, his intelligent eyes watching her face. Without words, he understood her better than any human ever could. They had moved through fire together, had saved each other's lives more times than either could count. And now, in this new battlefield of civilian life, they remained a team. "What do you think, partner?" she asked him quietly. "Ready for our next mission?" Vanguard's ears perked up, his body instantly alert, always ready, always faithful. Astria smiled and patted his head. "That is what I thought. We still have work to do." She reached for her phone and opened an email that had arrived that morning. It was from Commander Wright and contained only a brief message. "When you are ready, there are others who need what only you can teach." Attached was a file with information about veterans struggling to reintegrate, men and women whose specialized skills made civilian life a challenge. People like her, who had given everything to their country and now found themselves adrift, often with their own four-legged partners by their sides. For the first time in years, Astria felt a sense of purpose that matched her former service, not in combat now, but in healing, in teaching others what she and Vanguard had learned together, that the strongest warriors are not always those who make the most noise, and that true courage often moves silently through the world, unrecognized until the moment it is most needed. As night fell over the city, lights came on in windows across the skyline. Behind each one, people were watching the viral video of a woman and her dog who had silenced a courtroom. Some saw only the spectacle, the moment of revelation. But others, those who understood service and sacrifice, saw something more. A reminder that heroes walk among us every day, asking for no recognition, seeking no praise, simply doing what needs to be done. And somewhere in that city, Astria Thorne and Vanguard prepared for whatever would come next, ready as always to answer the call, whether it came with the weight of command or the quiet voice of conscience. For them, the mission would always be the same: to protect those who could not protect themselves, to stand when others would fall, and to serve with honor, whether anyone was watching or not.